All right, here we go. Good thinking
Uh,
22.
22. How are you?
All right, I'm good. I'm good.
Good, good. All right. I may have a small child run in. It'll happen. We'll handle it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, should we just dig in? A little intro?
Yeah. So this is Good Thinking Weekly, our podcast. I don't know if it's a podcast so much as a sharing of an audio sharing, a visual sharing of some elements of the letter that we wrote that I wrote last week. So we're toying around with how we're going to format it. Maybe just be a deep dive onto one topic, maybe be a deep dive into a couple. It will definitely not be a reading. I'm Chris. I write the newsletter. I run creative and strategy for In Good Co. Pronouns she, her.
All right, I love it. On it today. I'm Kirsten. I run the other half of In Good Co. So work on kind of strategy, business, and all things. And I am the beneficiary of all of the goodness and amazing finds that Chris sends, whether it's Instagram, whether it's email, whatever it is. And love the idea that it's finally in a newsletter and really resonating. And so we like to just unpack things as we do. And so we're just really running through and unpacking kind of whatever really intrigues me and stands out. So with that, how we've done this in the past is we've kind of talked about, broken down a few topics, but there's one in particular that I feel like really I want to do kind of a deep dive into. So maybe we'll really try that. There's a ton of highlights for me, like camp schedule, a lot of things that really resonated. And I was like, right. But I want to talk about non-alcoholic sponsorship at the Olympics. And like, to me, that was like, oh, wow, holy shit. Okay. Like, this is a huge kind of cultural moment. This is a huge, like the impact of what this is going to be isn't just like, oh, okay, well, the sign is going to be a little bit different, right? Like I was thinking about, think about like, okay, Coors or whoever's sponsored it in the past and what kind of, typical beer, alcohol brands and the vibe and the energy and what that brings. And then if you think about like Red Bull, right, at X Games and the extremeness of that and like the pushing of that and kind of what that really brings, really interested to kind of break down and think, oh, wow, non-alcoholic vibe. Okay, like there's some really smart brands, really smart marketing, really interesting things happening within that. And then how is it overall really going to impact like the vibe, the energy, and ultimately, right, the culture shift.
Yeah. I mean, it's already been happening. Like, so that's what I think is interesting about it. Like, this is not a test case. Like, in the World Cup, like, because it was in Saudi and, like, the Saudis, like, obviously not really big on drinking. Like they originally said like, yeah, they were going to allow alcohol and then they changed it and people were like upset, like really upset. And then it turned out like actually like they did it and people said the vibe was good. Like people weren't assholes. They weren't
Right.
like there was not as much kind of like heckling and bad behavior, which obviously, like I don't think that everybody that drinks like, is going to do that, but a big segment of especially in soccer. So obviously the Olympics is different. I think the Olympics this year in Paris is going to be a vibe. Like I am excited about it. I always loved the Olympics. I grew up watching the Olympics, so I am. If you read the letter, you know that I'm pro Olympics. But I think I think it's different. Like I think to me the energy of the Olympics is so much about like performing at your best and representing your like your country and like it's so like it's such an inspiring 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks when you include obviously I don't even understand why they separate the Special Olympics because to me like it's a should just be
Totally.
all part of one and I think ultimately I bet that in LA I think this is going to change drastically um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it will change the vibe, but I think the vibe of Paris Olympics is going to be fashion forward, like very
Mm-hmm.
fashion forward.
Can't wait for that. I'm here for that for
And I'm
sure.
excited to see non-alcoholic brands like have that more fashion vibe because I think they tend to have this
Yeah.
like athletic brewing and all of this like it's more like health focused. But I do think to me where I see non-alcoholic going is really like a moderation technique. So not so much an abstinence thing anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's like I'm using
That
non-alcoholic
tracks.
beers, like, which is how I use them, like to be like, hey, like I want to keep drinking, but I'm not in the mood to like, be falling on my face. Like you can drink a beer and like slow yourself down. It kind of continues the day, right? And I think that I suspect that that will be the lens, but who
Hmm.
knows? Personally, my
Yeah.
favorite alcoholic beer is like, well, it's not my favorite in the whole world, but the one that you can readily get is the Corona one, the Corona
Yeah.
Zero.
Oh,
So
they had that when I
uh,
was pregnant. That's right.
it tastes very similar, which is why I like it. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't like Corona, like, no luck, no dice. But I think it just like a lot of non-alcoholic beverage, like beers, especially for me, like don't always live up to the beer that you want. And this one tastes very similar. So
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
it'll be very well received as
Yeah. And
a
I think there is a moderation vibe for sure happening. Like I feel that in my own lifestyle. And I think just you see that culturally. I think it's really interesting. And I think also it ties into what we were talking a little bit about, like what I'll term as like empowerment marketing last week, like around, as you were saying within the Olympics, like it's doing your best, it's doing all of those, but can there be a way where it's doing your best, but it's like, almost whatever your best is, that's enough versus here she comes.
come and
All
say
right.
hello. And then we'll go back. Come and say hello because we're recording. Say hi
Introducing
everybody.
Harry.
Hello.
Harry,
This
this is
is
your
Harry,
debut, girl.
the apple of my eye, who's informing me that we're low on mozzarella. You know, living in Italy, mozzarella is the thing. All right, you got it?
Very
I'll bring
important.
you some more mozzarella in a bit. Okay?
Hi,
I'll come
Harry.
5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Hold it
Do
high
a
above
star
your head.
showing every so often. We'll have celebrity kids. I'm in. Okay, so love the
We're back.
cameo of Harry. But what I was saying is like I think it's all like I'm really interested to see all of these things and thinking back, on how Red Bull, like I think that's a good example in my head of how Red Bull creates a different vibe. Red Bull sponsoring something creates a different vibe than a beer or alcohol does. And especially like Red Bull and the brand, and it was so extreme, and it was this, and it was pushing and doing all of those things for whatever. X Games I think is a great example, and you see kind of that vibe, like how is non-alcoholic going to take, like, and then within kind of this empowerment, like doing your best, is there kind of really some like really positive, like I'm excited about seeing all of these really like empowered, like, brands and kind of marketing plays within the Olympics. I'd love
Yeah.
that.
I think we've already started, like, it's interesting, like, seeing already it's, I think before, like, there was the marketing to me around the Olympics was very much like, like more rah rah, like, Michael Phelps, like, we're the best in the world, like,
Yeah.
America. And obviously, this is the American lens, and I don't come from that, so I feel it more. Like I notice it,
Yeah.
it strikes me, and the vibe already of like brands is coming out as more like it's more elegant. It's more like
Yeah.
it's like here's us doing like stretches for getting ready for gymnastics, and it feels very different. So I think that it will work. I think it's gonna have a nice synergy. What I think
Hmm.
is difficult and what I wrote about in the letter is that like sponsorship is tricky now, right? Like, because sponsorship used to be like you controlled the outlet, like controlled how you were going to see it. You're going to see the commercials, you're going to see all of this stuff.
Hmm.
Now, like, you're going to watch the Olympics and you're going to be following that person, like, you're going to be following the individual athlete on TikTok. And you might
Yeah.
see
Right.
like, you might see half of the gymnastics on TikTok, and you're not going to be viewing it through like the media's lens, right? You're going to be viewing it through the athlete's lens or an
Hmm.
influencer who's attending. Like, like there's so many big influencers who are going to be doing stuff there. So I think it's going to be really interesting. Like, how do you bring that vibe? Like, how do you ask people to do that? I'm just drinking like Corona Zeros like everywhere. It's it's not the same. So I do think
Yeah.
that is an interesting challenge. I like the idea of what the Mets are doing, where they're creating like show. I think that's one way to kind of control, like to make the media like that works for the platform.
Hmm.
I haven't heard anyone saying that they're going to do that, but like, like what does Corona want to be known for in these Olympics? Like to me, I'm really hoping they go for style because that's not how I associate them.
Hmm.
Like I just sort of always associate Corona as like being by the beach in summer, and maybe that will be it, and it'll just be like, oh, it's just a more relaxed version of summer. But I hope that they kind of
Yeah.
have a different lens, and it's like more ownable, I guess. Not a
Yeah.
quieter version of the alcoholic version,
Right.
like a
Right.
loud
And I think,
version
yeah,
sometimes, which I think is what you're saying.
totally. It can't be an interpretation of, it's like the non-alcoholic version. And I think that's what brands are showing us. Like it's its own brand. It's not like a dumbed down version of this. Like it needs to be its own brand. And I think seeing all of these non-alcoholic brands start just as non-alcoholic brands and just have cool marketing, great branding, like do something in that space. The other brands that are a non-alcoholic version of something else, like the stage is set, they need to set up and really be their own brand within that, not just like a dumbed down interpretation.
Yeah, and I think Kin and
Yeah.
Gaia, they do that well. And I think Athletic Brewing has done an amazing job with their brand, but for a very particular lens, right? Like an
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
Um, and so I hope that maybe like I, to be fair, like I should look into what Corona Zero has been doing and like how they're doing it differently because I have not seen any advertising coming out of them. Like the only reason that I know about it is that they just have great shelf placement, right? Like
Mm.
I don't I see it, I bought it, I liked it, I kept buying it. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's ultimately is retail.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I haven't seen any advertising like noticeable or noteworthy anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing for the Olympics. I'm really interested as we're seeing so much of retail coming back and pop-ups and talked about now Zara's doing one in Milan, which I want us to check out. Um, like what retail is going to look like, what the pop-ups, like what that experience is going to be like in Paris. I know LA, just being in LA, like you can feel the prepping for it and the getting ready for it, which is obviously a ways off. But like I really want to know the retail experience and see that. Like I think that has an opportunity to be amazing, an amazing part
Yeah,
of it.
I think that brands are. I don't know. Like it's interesting. I hear kind of like rumors of both sides of the story, right? Like brands doing it really big, and then brands being like Honda or no, it was Toyota being like, we're out. Like we don't see how we can make like we can make our advertising dollars make sense this way.
Mm.
Um, but it's it's going to be all over Paris. They're going to have they're still saying that the whole river will be redone and the swimming is going to be in the river. Like I think it's going to
Be
be an
amazing.
iconic event. And if the rivers aren't lined with pop-ups like by every single brand, like I'd be shocked.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. All right. I mean, I have a couple other things that we can kind of dig into, depending on Harry's schedule.
She's watching Frozen. We're between Frozen 1 and Frozen 2 right now, and we're just kind of like shuffling back and forth. We're
Yeah.
deep in the Frozen era.
I mean, yeah. It's a moment in time. Yeah. It's good.
A
It's good.
long one.
Dr. Pepper, like I think this is such a rad case study. Like obviously been around forever, certainly since I was a kid and probably beyond. And it totally tracks. Like my son Hudson, literally that's his favorite soda. And who knows if it really is like from a taste standpoint or if it is just from like a brand perception standpoint. He's 12, like for sure it could go either way with that. But I think it's so fascinating that they're like moving up and what they've done with as we've worked with a lot of, kind of historic brands that have been there for a minute and are really kind of figuring out how to be really relevant today, but still maintain kind of their heritage.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, like, and again, like as a non-US consumer, I always viewed like Dr. Pepper as kind of the outlier soda, right? And I think that's
Hmm.
generally like how it's perceived.
Yeah.
And it always felt like special because it was an outlier. What they've done is kind of lean into that kind of energy of like being the outlier. They're not trying to be healthy. They're not trying to
Yeah.
um sorry, my notifications are going off. I'll have to remember that next time. But you know, they're not trying to be healthy. They're not trying to do anything, and I think that's smart. Like, quite honestly, I think that's really, really clever. All right, I think that might be time, guys.
All right. I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Harry, can you
before
send us off?
you want to say bye to everybody?
I want to go to bed.
Well, we're not going to bed. We have to finish dinner. Say ciao, arrivederci.
All right. That's all, folks.
That's all she wrote. Bye.